Today's question is, people who wax others for a living. What's the worst horror story you have of a client?
Not me, but this happened to a friend of mine. She and her girlfriend decided to get Brazilian waxes together. It was her first Brazilian wax, so she had no frame of reference for how much it was supposed to hurt. First strip, okay. Few more, fine. Then one more pull and mega pain. The waxer looked terrified, but then just smiled and just quickly made gestures for her to get dressed and come out front to pay. This happened in South Korea. When she got home, she inspected the area, and the waxer had actually ripped her labia. She had to immediately go to hospital to get stitches to have it repaired. All my friend did was go back to the salon with her hospital bill and demand that they pay it and call the matter settled, which they did. There are too many. Truly, it can be awful. Most stories have to do with bad hygiene, some with clients' attitudes or actions, and some will just be plain old problems getting the hair off. I haven't had a really bad one in a while, or maybe I just am not fazed by it anymore. A favorite of mine was the girl who came in for a Brazilian and was shaking from nervousness before we even started. I'll spare you the details, but it took over an hour to finish the service. Usually takes 15 to 30 minutes. 45 is the most it should ever take. And at some point she had a full-on anxiety attack. I was being as gentle as I could considering I was ripping hair out of her body, and after every pull she sat up, cried loudly, and then dropped back onto the bed. She got off the bed still half naked and started pacing back and forth loudly sobbing and hyperventilating. I was trying my best to keep her calm, but honestly, it was all in her head. Getting your hair ripped out always hurts, but her hair should have been an easy service. She let herself panic and the fear got to her. After she left, I sat in the break room, took a deep breath in, and starting sobbing LOL. I was so glad to be done with it. She was sweet otherwise, no smell, easy hair to work with, but God, that was the most stressful service of my life. She actually came back a few more times after that, and we finished in 20 minutes. No more incidents. In high school, I had a friend who was smart but lazy. To get him motivated to get better grades, my friends and I made a bet. If he didn't meet a certain average, then I'd get to wax his armpits. If I didn't make that same average, I'd have to do 50 push-ups on the cafeteria table. He didn't make the average, so I had a pool party at my house with my friends and him, and we all gathered around to watch me wax his armpits. He was lying on his back on the family room ottoman, and I was sitting beside him, leaning forward to do it all. We also recorded it on video. He spent the entire week hiding from his bigoted dad, cause he was scared he'd get in trouble for having incredibly smooth armpits. Fast forward to a few months after, when I had a school project that involved making a video. So I took the camera to my teacher to show it to her. This camera shows the history of most recent videos, so since the waxing video was the only video before my project, she saw the thumbnail of me leaning over my friend, lying on the ottoman, but you can't see what I'm doing with my hands after freezing, and seeing the confusion on her face, I tried to quickly explain. I stuttered and struggled a lot with that. I don't think she believed me. That little thumbnail honestly looked like the intro to very shitty amateur porn. I still got an A on my project though. I also never had to do push-ups in the cafeteria. I was the waxee in this situation, but I was donating blood at the same time as several fairly attractive girls, and I was doing a slightly longer and more uncomfortable donation. And the phlebotomist had actually had a couple of them talk to me about the procedure before they decided to do it or not. My phlebotomist tells me that we're done and that she's going to tear off the tape holding the line in my arm, but since my arms are fairly hairy, it might take some hair off. I say okay. And the first strip of tape, she actually pulls out a large amount of hair. She apologized, but I, of course, act like I feel nothing to impress the ladies. I was looking the other direction when she tore off the second strip, and it was 50 times more painful than the first one, which had removed nearly all the hair under it. My first though was, holy F asterisk asterisk asterisk, how much hair did she get? Followed by, I don't think I have that much hair on my whole arm. Followed by, wow. This is still really painful, but I must show no weakness or the ladies will not be wooed by my stoic blood-donating manliness. I steel myself to look at the tape strip, expecting to see a whole Muppet's worth of hair on the tape, and to my surprise found instead the bloodline and needle still on the tape. She just ripped out the whole-ass needle and line like it was a Beyblade. I've got a few stories. 1. My now ex-boss was working at a salon across the road from a popular restaurant. It was only open at nighttime, but the owner of the restaurant and his favorite waitress always seemed to be there setting up for the next service. It was common knowledge that these two were having an affair. The waitress booked in for a Brazilian one day and had a constant drizzle of jizz spewing out of her privates. The wax was having a hard time sticking. She didn't seem to care though. 2. I used to have a very friendly but very overweight lady come in for just a bikini wax, not a full Brazilian. I'm an overweight lady too, so I want to make it clear that I mean no hate or disrespect. But this lady never washed properly. She had a tangy, cheesy gunk that would accumulate under her gut and between her leg rolls. It smelled bad, but it wasn't a strong smell. It was just so tangy that you could swear that you could taste it on the roof of your mouth. I had morning sickness, and the smell was literally enough to make me vomit. I had to leave the room and vomit in the closest sink. Our only toilet was in a separate building. 3. I had a client tell me that she had to cancel her Brazilian because her period had just started the day before. I said, "No problem, you can just give me a call and reschedule whenever you like. I run a small beauty salon from home now, so I'm very flexible with my times." 40 minutes later, she wrote a TXT back saying, "False alarm. See you this afternoon." I thought, how the heck do you get a false alarm with your period? I always put a large sheet of butcher's paper on the bed for any bikini or leg wax. It stops wax from dripping onto the towels, and it stops people's bare butts from touching the towels too. This lady moved the butcher's paper, which I thought was odd, but now I realize she did that because she knew the white paper would show off her blood way too easily. So she just laid there and bled all over my towels because she wasn't wearing a tampon. She's a very overweight lady too, so couldn't see her bleeding straight away. I didn't know she was bleeding until the very end of the treatment. I was so upset with her. It wasn't the first time I served a client on her period, and I could understand if it were unexpected, and she couldn't control it, but she knew damn well what was happening and just didn't care. Lightning round. I had a teacher who waxed out a tampon while doing a Brazilian. That same teacher served a lady who got aroused during her Brazilian, and basically her pussy was getting so wet that my teacher would have to wipe her down with tissues to dry the area before they could continue. It's actually not that uncommon to wax literal shit out of a butthole. It probably happens to me once a year. There are some girls who seem to always have a little piece of toilet paper in there. It's certainly not the worst thing I've seen though. I had a coworker, 19-year-old female, have a man book in for a tummy wax, and when she entered the room he was wearing nothing but a cock ring. I thought she meant a piercing, but no, a full-on vibrating sex toy. We refused him service and had to kick him out, grinning face with sweat. That's the only stories that spring to mind straight away. I have more massage horror stories too, usually involving creepy men. I hope this was informative and educational for you all. Not mine but a friend's, temporary job as an assistant in a beauty clinic. Unisex, they offer Brazilians, hair and beard styling, and the rest normal stuff. One fat old Indian man of about 50 plus came in, said he wanted a Brazilian. My friend starts preparing the materials for the person who does those. He ushers the man into the male dressing room. He proceeds to undress completely once my friend left to get the necessities. The waxier and the assistant come back to the unwelcome side of a really fat old Indian man who looked pregnant, just standing looking pleased with himself. We tell him to lay on the waxing table. He asks for us to do his lower parts first. So the waxier does. He has what looks like a lot of moles, lumps and warts in his genital area. As she is removing the hair, he gets erect. Not so unusual, but what was him giggling creepily and him starting to move his appendage in an effort to touch the hands of the waxier. He then asked if we could do his in-between areas. He turns over, he gets a pillow to support his weight so we can easily access that area. He has dried shit lining the inside of his cheeks and thighs. My friend leaves the room to avoid the horrific sight and smell that only really came apparent as he farted. Once he had left, about 5 minutes later, he hears a shout of panic. The waxier runs out of the room, followed by a naked Indian man with a boner. Police got called and the man was arrested naked for sexual assault. He was touching her leg, and then he sat up and tried to grab her body. She managed to escape. Poor woman had to go home. She was in a real bad panic attack. I work at the front desk of a wax place. I have a few. 1. This bigger woman comes in for a Brazilian. She lays on the table and the waxer goes to help pull her stomach back to make the skin taut, and discovers this putrid-smelling, open sore where her stomach rubbed against just above her pubic area. 2. A young girl, about 19 to 20, comes in and goes back for a Brazilian and doesn't come back out for an hour. Should take 15 minutes. Apparently, she was telling the waxer how she had plans to lose her virginity that night, but had never even put a tampon in. So, naturally, she asked the waxer to put a tampon in her, and for some reason my coworker did. 3. This woman's vag smelled like smoked pork. 4. An older, larger woman comes in to get a Brazilian. She gets on the table and spreads her legs to reveal a full bush covered in dry discharge and feces. 5. The waxer was almost done with the wax when she started to faintly smell shit. All of a sudden the woman just starts leaking liquid shit out of her ass and apologizing profusely. They finished the service and the woman didn't come back. 6. Final story is not gross. I am also a licensed EMT, so one day, I'm working and one of the waxers comes out and asks me to come into the room because her client is acting strange. I've never been in the room during a wax, so I knew this was weird. I go in there, and the woman had freaked herself out so much that she was dissociated and her legs and hands had locked in place. I talked to her and eventually calmed her down to where she could get up and leave. She also did not return. And this is the end of today's video. I hope you liked it, and don't forget to comment an anecdote or experience similar to the topic of the video. Leave your like, share if you like the video, and lastly, don't forget to activate the little bell so you don't miss any of our daily videos. Bye-bye.